Good day, learners! We are now in the third quarter, Lesson 1 for Mathematics 9. Our topic for today is determining conditions that make a quadrilateral a parallelogram. So our objective for today is to determine the conditions that make a quadrilateral a parallelogram. But before we proceed, let's take a look on the different types of parallelogram. Today we are learning how to classify different types of parallelograms. Parallelograms are a type of quadrilateral and they look like this. They have two sets of sides that are parallel to each other. But there are actually different types of parallelograms. Sometimes a parallelogram can be called a rhombus or sometimes a rectangle. Now a rhombus looks like this. It's a parallelogram. It has two sets of parallel sides, but in addition, all of the sides have the same length. We can show that by putting one of these dashed lines on each side, so that's a rhombus. What about a rectangle? Well, a rectangle looks like this. It's a parallelogram. It has two sets of parallel sides, but what makes a rectangle special are its angles. Rectangles have 4 right angles, which could be shown with these square angle sides in each corner. And so that's a rectangle. But believe it or not, there's actually one more type of parallelogram. If you combine both a rhombus and a rectangle, you end by a square. A square looks like this. It's a parallelogram. It has all sides with the same length. We'll use those dashes to show it. And it has 4 right angles. We'll use these 4 angle sides to show it. Now there's also one more type of parallelogram. It's this one we first looked at. It's a parallelogram because it has two sets of parallel sides, but its side lengths are not the same and it doesn't have any right angles. So this doesn't have any of these special names. We can only call this shape a parallelogram. And here you have it. These are all of the possible names for a parallelogram. So the first condition that makes up a quadrilateral a parallelogram is if both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. So this side is parallel to this side, and this side is also parallel to this side. So the second condition is that a quadrilateral is a parallelogram if both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. So by using the figure below, we can tell that these sides are equal to each other, so they have the same length. And also, these sides are congruent to each other. So we can tell that if both pairs of opposite sides are congruent, then that quadrilateral is a parallelogram. Moving on with the third condition, a quadrilateral is a parallelogram if both pairs of opposite angles are congruent. So, ang magkabilang angle na to ay dapat magkapareho ang sukat. And also for these two opposite angles. So, kapag ang sukat nito ay 110 degrees, then this should also be 110 degrees. And if this one is 70 degrees, then this will also become 70 degrees. Next condition, a quadrilateral is a parallelogram if the diagonals bisect each other. So, ibig sabihin nito, kapag nag-cross or nag-intersect ang dalawang diagonals, then dapat hinahati nila ang bawat isa ng may magkaparehong sukat. So, this diagonal is divided into two congruent parts. And this diagonal is divided by the first diagonal into two congruent parts. Okay, so moving on with the fifth condition, A quadrilateral is a parallelogram if each diagonal divides a parallelogram into two congruent triangles. So by using the same figure below, kapag naglagay tayo ng diagonal, then we can notice that this triangle is congruent to this triangle. So, if we have the other diagonal, then we can tell that this triangle is also congruent to this one. So that's the fifth condition wherein we can tell that the quadrilateral is a parallelogram if each diagonal divides a parallelogram into two congruent triangles. For the sixth and last condition, a quadrilateral is a parallelogram if one pair of opposite sides are parallel and congruent. So this figure, it has one pair of opposite sides which are parallel, and these sides are also congruent to each other. And there you have it, the 6 conditions that makes a quadrilateral a parallelogram. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something. And if you have questions or some clarifications, feel free to comment down below, and I would love to hear it from you. Bye-bye!